Hello and welcome to International Women's Day 2022. I'm Lucy McCarraher, the founder of Rethink Press and the Business Book Awards, and I'm here with 5 women authors to talk about how their books have changed their businesses and their lives, and how books can break bias. So I'm going to ask you first to introduce yourselves quickly. Sapna, shall we start with you?
Actually hoping you weren't going to start with me because there's a helicopter flying above, but that's absolutely fine. I'm Satna Puru. I'm a brand consultant, designer, author of Let's Get Visible, and a speaker. And yeah, do you need any more from that?
No, that's great. No, that's lovely. Thank you. And yes, I've got a copy of your book here. So Let's Get Visible. It's a very visible book.
Bright red.
Sophie, let's hear from you.
Hi, I'm Sophie. I've just about to launch tomorrow my new business, which is going to be called Moja, and it is a business that is working with entrepreneurs and senior execs within corporate businesses to help them raise their profiles and get known. So that's the new venture. Alongside that, I'm an author of 2 books and also an investor, both in property and angel investment, and a non-executive director for several organisations as well.
Thank you, Sophie. Paula Dunn, you're in Australia. Thank you for joining us. Tell us about you.
It's a pleasure. Hi, my name is Paula Dunn. I'm a teenage resilience expert and cognitive scientist. I mainly work with teenage girls and young women to help them create confidence to conquer life. I am the author of 2 books, one of which is The Limited Edition Leader, to create confidence to conquer life. The book was written ideally for mums of teenage girls, specifically Generation X mums, and to help them bridge the gap between themselves and their teenage daughters, and how everyone can break biases and create confidence to conquer life.
Fantastic. Thank you, Paula. Jean Gibson, lovely to have you here. Tell us about you.
Thank you, Lucy. Hello, everybody. I'm Jean Gibson. I'm an author and I'm a life coach, and I work with children and young people, helping them to develop their resilience, develop their confidence and self-esteem. My book is called The ADHD Support Handbook, a real life guide to empowering a child with ADHD and related conditions. Because at the time that I wrote this, there was a gap in terms of when your child is diagnosed with ADHD, where do you go? What do you do? What does it mean? And that's why I wrote this book. And so I'm aiming to work with tweens and teens and parents, supporting them through their journey of ADHD.
Fantastic, thank you. And finally, Mary Maguire.
Hello, thank you, Lucy, for having me here. Very exciting and a wonderful panel. I'm a business consultant of 20 years working with global companies. And it was through them 20 years of seeing how there was a very different outcome depending on your gender in terms of business success, particularly when you'd landed and delivered big projects, which is what I was involved with. And so I started to focus on women and how to make women successful in the workplace. So I'm a female success coach, and I'm the author of The Female Edge, which is about accelerating your leadership ambition and crafting a career on your own terms as a woman, which was obviously a Rethink book. And yeah, delighted to be here today.
Thank you. Thanks so much, all of you. Fascinating and wonderful books. I wanted to ask you, I did some research a few years ago and indeed wrote a book about it myself, about the fact that women seem to have more challenges and feel less confident about writing and publishing their books. So I wanted to ask you, if all of you, if you had your own challenges to writing your book, and whether you felt that this was because of your gender. Can we start with Sapna? Shall we go back to you?
Yeah, thank you, Lucy. Yes, as you know, I had quite a few challenges around writing my book. I work in the design industry. I'm a brand consultant, and at the time, in fact, I've just checked the stats as well, that there's only 11% of leaders in the design industry are women, sorry.
Wow.
And so yeah, 89% are still male in that industry. And it's interesting because actually at graduate level, there's more women than men that are graduating. So it's kind of like what happens. And it's always a very male dominated industry. It actually meant that when I graduated and worked in the design industry for a while, I didn't see any female leaders that I wanted to aspire to be like. So I actually left the design industry for quite a long time and ended up working in media, where I did see quite a lot of female role models, because I could see where my career could go. After having the kids, then I went back into the design industry because it was something that I could do, work from home. When I was writing the book, I had huge amounts of imposter syndrome, and huge amounts of, kind of, is the design industry going to take this book seriously because it's written by a woman? And you and I had a conversation about that, and he even considered putting the book out under a pen name, because not only did I have a female name, but I also had a female and a foreign name. So I wondered what kind of biases would be attributed to that book. And I have to say thank you for writing Abu, actually, Book of One's Own, because that really G'd me up into thinking, well, it was a call to arms for all women to write their book, really. And that kind of gave me the courage to start it, and you helped me coach me through it. But I had huge amounts of, is this actually going to be taken seriously as a woman, and because of that industry? And when it came out, I did give, sort of wrote to Design Week and wrote to Creative Review and publications like that, and told them about the book and the fact that it had won an award at the Business Book Awards. And it was literally, nothing, that they just weren't interested. However, the entrepreneur community, who I actually wrote the book for, to help them understand about brand, because I work with coaches and consultants and experts in their field, they've taken the book on board and really loved it. So
fantastic.
So that's my story anyway.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And do you feel that you experienced imposter syndrome because you were a woman? Do you feel that was something that was to do with your gender?
I think definitely within the design industry, that's something that I've kind of not bothered trying to push it forward in that industry because of that. But it was written for entrepreneurs in the first place. So, amongst that, I don't think that's actually affected whether I was a woman or a man. I think I've made the whole branding process a lot clearer through the book, by simplifying it down. And people really appreciate that regardless of gender.
That's really good to hear. Paula, how about you? Did you have challenges to overcome in writing your book?
Yes, because I never set out to write a book to begin with. And the only reason why I wrote the book was it was something to solidify my knowledge down on paper, through the Dent KPI program. And even when we initially were going down that path of looking at how to write a book, I was very resistant. And I think mostly the resistance came from the fact that I didn't have a self-belief or self-confidence that I actually had something to write about, that I had knowledge, that I had something that was worth people paying money for to read. That was my I guess, limiting beliefs that I had in my mind, thinking I wasn't good enough to write a book, considering I'm a scientist by background. And I guess, it was, they were kind of the challenges, and then obviously feeling that sense of imposter syndrome, like thinking that I wasn't good enough and comparing myself to others in the space. And so most of my career has been in the pharmaceutical medical research field. So branching out into the education sector, where I'm, working with young girls, and I've developed a program that I would have liked to have had at 15 and not 40, So, in hindsight, going back and going, if I could wave a magic wand, what could I have, what would I have liked to have had it as a teenager that complemented the academic curriculum, so to speak. And so I think the challenge I found was, obviously a lot of principals of high schools are males, and trying to get that credibility of like walking in and they're looking at me going, who is this chick, and try and trying to say no, but I'm a cognitive scientist. You know, I don't just do woo-woo stuff, but it's like a bit of soft skills, but it's also a science behind it, and a bit of a mishmash, and being compared to middle-aged white Australian males, you know, who are psychologists, and you know, they're the key opinion leaders, and they're the ones that are being invited to speak, but you know, and that sort of thing. And where I'm kind of meshing a bit of personal experience as well as science in my book and in the programs in which I run. So it's not just academic and, you know, sort of you know, science-based stuff without being able to apply it and test it.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I noticed everybody nodding at the imposter syndrome mentions. But it's very interesting that both of your, Sapna and Paula, both of your markets, if you like, feel male dominated. And that was an issue for you in terms of writing the book and putting it out there. Jean, was that something that you felt? What did you feel about writing your book, and what were the challenges you faced?
For me, imposter syndrome, I totally relate to that, because the book came from a personal experience. My grandson was diagnosed with ADHD. My daughter came to me, and my aim was to support my daughter. And for a long time, I've wanted to write a book. I was thinking about this last night, and initially I wanted to write a novel. And then I thought, well, what am I going to write about? So I've always had the desire to write a book. But when this happened to my grandson, and the challenges that I could see that he was facing and my daughter was facing, it was obvious to me this is the book that I needed to write. My challenges were myself, and whether I actually had the ability to write a book. I knew I wanted to help other parents that were going through a similar thing. I knew that I had to raise the awareness of this condition, because it just wasn't understood. It's still not understood. I think things are slowly starting to change. So my challenge really was myself, but also with other people around me. So my family and friends. You're going to write a book. Oh, I know somebody who wrote a book and they didn't make any money from it. So there were challenges with people's perspectives on the purpose of writing the book.
Interesting.
There were challenges from people's views on the condition of ADHD. Did they believe or they didn't believe that it was actually a thing? So that was the kind of challenge that I faced, but mostly around the imposter syndrome. Could I write it? Would anybody read it? Is it going to be of value to anybody? But I knew that I had to produce it, and actually, it has given me credibility. You know, I took early retirement from my corporate role in human resources. So I've worked in career development and human resources for many years, and the IT. And so I've moved into life coaching and coaching as a career coach. And so this has come really from left field in a way. So what do I know about ADHD? What do I know about conditions? I'm not a medical professional. I had a different career, but I'm now working with others. I'm actually working through becoming qualified as an ADHD coach. But having the book, all of the people that I'm studying with have all purchased and read the book.
Fantastic.
And they kind of look to me in a way to, you know, that I know what I'm talking about, because they've read the book and they can understand where I'm coming from. They relate to my story.
Brilliant.
But also what I've found, so I'm talking too much.
Fine,
I'm also finding that I have a group, but I've engaged more people from the education sector, which is really where I want to target, because you know, young children and young people in school are really struggling, and the earlier that we can get this condition understood and treated and supported, the better life that the child and the young person and adult will have. Absolutely. And that's kind of what I'm working towards.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Jean. Mary, how about you? You also come from a corporate background, or working with corporates. So did you feel this? You were nodding at the imposter syndrome remarks. Did you feel that too?
Absolutely. And one of the reasons I focus on women is because women are twice as likely to suffer from imposter syndrome as men. And again, one of the things I talk about in the Female Edge is some of the reason why we have a different experience as women is we're socialized to behave and respond in a different way. So we're socialized to be genteel, to be supportive, to be demure even, and boys are socialized to be go-getters, to be competitive, to even be aggressive, which is seen as a good thing in boys. So we have a lot of our socialization as girls and as young women that we have to unpack before we can find, you know, us in there. And I came from a childhood where I was constantly dumbed down and constantly told to stop, you know, children should be seen, not heard, and stop talking. And so how you find your voice when you've got to unpack all these things takes a long time. So my first book was the big one for me in terms of imposter syndrome, which was a personal transformation book, Coming Home to You. And I did that one more on my own path. And I really struggled with all of them questions that people were saying about, well, who am I to talk about this? What do I have that's unique? Why would anyone buy a book from me? And having to overcome that. I have to say the second book, The Female Edge, coming through the book builder program was much easier. First of all, I was in the head of writing it. And secondly, the process is just very efficient. So I was just ready to write. I wanted a process to help me and got it done. But the imposter syndrome thing is a lot of what I'm coaching my female leaders on. But going back to, I think it was Sapna's comment about comparison and comparing ourselves. It's something that we all do, and we're almost encouraged to do it. But comparison is the death of creativity. As soon as we do that, we just kill something inside us that's really fundamental. So I think I've learned, but I have to constantly remind myself, is don't compare, don't worry. Nobody else will actually have the same view as you. Even if it's been written about millions of times, I've still got a voice in this, and I want it to be heard.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Mary. And Sophie, you've written 2 books now. What's your experience? And actually, has it changed over the writing period?
Yes, it has a bit. So I've got 2 books. So my first book is called From Learner to Earner, and it is a book for students and graduates to help them secure their first graduate job. And I think I had a very practical challenge with that book and with the second book around carving out the time and that balance, that mythical work-life balance that we all talk about all the time, but it seems to relate to women more than men. So for me, as a single parent, I don't get a lot of support at all from my ex-husband. So everything falls on me in terms of our daughter. And carving out the time alongside running a business and all the other responsibilities that I've got was challenging. So I had a practical challenge with the first book, but I felt very confident writing that book. I'd been head of graduate recruitment at John Lewis for years. I then set up a business specialising in graduate recruitment, had massive clients, very well-known clients, and was very well respected in that field. So really confident actually in terms of the content and putting it out there, which was fab. The second book, The Ambition Accelerator, which is for young women to encourage them to pursue their career ambitions and to be bold and to go for it, was a bit different. So I still had the same challenges around balance, although I wrote it during the first lockdown when we were actually pretty locked down at that point. So I had a lot more time on my hands. So actually I would say that side was less of a challenge because we were all at home, right? The other challenge that I had a lot stronger with that is relating to what everyone said so far around that imposter syndrome. So for that second book, I approached some of them quite famous women that I really, really admire, so the likes of Sarah Davies, who's everywhere at the moment, in terms of Dragon's Den, Strictly, Jacqueline de Rocas, who's this amazing tech lady, some really impressive women, and I approached them to interview them to contribute to that book. So I was a bit nervous interviewing some of them, so I kind of felt a little bit like, oh, should I be doing this? I felt nervous putting that book out because it's got some of my backstory in, so definite imposter syndrome in that sense. But yeah, glad to have done it and have the 2 books.
That's fantastic. No, it's really interesting that, you've all talked about, ultimately what comes down to a confidence issue, am I, and the imposter syndrome, the imposter's kind of typical question is, who am I to write a book, do whatever I do, and it's fantastic that you all got over it, but interesting that you saw it as an issue and a challenge to actually getting the books written and out there. I mean, in my view, but I would say this, wouldn't I, as a publisher, I think that writing a book is, and being a published author is something that gives women, especially even more than men, that additional kind of credibility and a perception of expertise, which we often lack in the wider world. And doing that is the thing that, we have the problem of confidence in the first place and credibility, and then when we've actually published a book, it gives even more positive results than perhaps it does for men. So I'd love to hear from all of you what the positives have been, and whether you think that actually having your book out there has broken any biases that you came across before, or felt were there during the writing. So Paula, let's come to you and see if you've actually had some results from that male-dominated area that make that your book has broken through.
Yeah, it's funny because I guess in the education sector, I've got something tangible now that I can promote with them. So, like, reaching out to them is one thing, but saying, hey, I'll give you a copy of my book, and it's a gift. It's a gift, and it's something tangible, as opposed to just giving a business card or a brochure that they could easily just throw away. But you're not going to throw a book away because it's, of value. It's quality. So it has helped me open up doors being a published author, and just being called a published author, and also managing to get Amazon bestseller when on the list as well, which was a really nice surprise. So it has opened up doors in that regard. Also with mums, with Generation X mums, that's opened the doors. And also back in my industry, my old industry of medical research, because there's a lot of women there that are working pharmaceutical industry of all levels, and not many people know of a published author in that industry. So they're kind of like, oh wow, and so it actually got me a job there, so to help me through COVID and the slump in with all the education sector and all that. So I managed to be able to jump back in the industry, going, being impressed with my profile raising on social media, things that industry would, a normal person that works in that industry would never do, so it's and one thing about writing a book, it's taught me that to be authentic, to be authentically me, and to be okay with that. Whereas, and so people that read my book, if they like what they read, they're getting who I am, the real me, and which builds trust in me working with their daughter or working with their students, because there's no pretense. It's sharing my backstory of adversity, being born as a special needs child, growing up and being, I guess, on the back foot of not being equal to everyone else. So my struggle was always, I wanted to be equal to everyone else. So I worked 10 times as hard to get to where I needed to go. So there's been a lot of adversity. But yeah, so I've been really blessed with having a published book.
Oh, that's really wonderful to hear.
Yeah.
Jean, how about you? Have you established yourself in the ADHD area by being an author?
I think I'm still working on it, Lucy, because shortly after launching the book, I kind of went straight into the studying, because I really want to be known not just as an author of an ADHD book, because I've got the second book in my mind already now, but I want to be seen as a qualified ADHD life coach, and that's quite important in the ADHD field. But it's also very important to me in terms of my values, growth and development. My business is called Active Personal Development, so being able to develop myself is important. So the book has raised my credibility, raised my own confidence in my abilities, I'm able to use it with clients. So when I have people coming to me to be coached, sometimes I'll give them a copy of the book. I'll send them a copy of the book. Depending on the conversation that we've had, I may be able to refer them to specific areas in the book that will help them. And then they can decide if they want to work with me. So it's helped me with my clients. It's raised my credibility with people that come to me for coaching. As I said, with the organisation that I'm studying with, they had actually approached me the year before to come and work for them as an ADHD coach, but I wasn't qualified. So now I'm actually studying with them to become qualified, and I'm hoping that once I'm qualified, that will give me the opportunity to be able to work for other organisations who are looking for ADHD coaches. So I'm on a path. I've kind of got I know the direction that I'm working towards, and I think fully exploiting the book is yet to come, but I can see that it's already it's kind of gaining momentum in that area. Also, some of the other business associates that I work with are promoting my book, but they're also, because of the book, they are recommending me to their clients. So I work with psychotherapists and other professionals, educational consultants, and they will refer clients to me based on my, I suppose, perceived now expertise in the field, having written the book. So yes, there's been a lot of value from it, but I know there's still more to come and there's more work to do. And I've already started to think about book 2 now, which is going to be, I'm going to keep it in the same vein, because I kind of see it as maybe not a trilogy yet, but I can see book 2 is for adults, and thinking about the adult space and producing a support handbook for adults. And I'm actually thinking about it based on my career development history about people in the workplace, and aiming at perhaps employers in the workplace and supporting them to support their employees. So
fantastic. No, I mean, I love the way that I think, you know, when I write books and when I see other people, when I'm mentoring people through writing books, I love the way that all the experience, even if it didn't seem to be directly related to the book when you did it, it might have been experience from years or decades ago, suddenly gets pulled in, and you suddenly see the value of your kind of holistic life and knowledge. And it can be put to use in the book, which is that bigger platform for sharing your experience and expertise.
And I have to say thank you to you, Lucy, because although I'd kind of bolted already writing the book when I met you, but your support and your mentoring has been phenomenal in actually me being able to produce the book. So
well, thank you, Jean. I'm really happy to hear that. Thank you. Mary, did you feel that your book pulled together all experience from all areas of your life, and also has it given you that kind of added credibility?
Yes to both. So my earlier life, I was a social worker. So I've worked with people in lots of different and difficult and challenging situations, and that always helped me, that experience in business as a business consultant, because I had a much more holistic view of how important is this particular situation, and let's calm down, nobody's going to die or anything. But what was important to me, and I've mentioned the book builder program I came through, is my first book was more about how I learned to transform my life, and therefore how other people can learn to transform them, overcoming illness, overcoming childhood trauma and things. So that book, Coming Home to You, is about that. But what I didn't do with that, and this is where I struggled when I then went back out to the world, is I wasn't really clear about who exactly is this book for. I hadn't really been really clear about that, because I said it could be for anyone dealing with anything, you know, and it can help everyone. And all of our books, to a certain extent, all of the books we're hearing about could help anyone in any situation. The difficulty with a book being for everyone about anything, it means no one buys it for nothing. And while I did okay with the first book, that lack of focus. So the book builder program really helped me to, before I even write a word on the page, who is the book for and what will it help them with? And I already had coaching programs for women, so I already knew it was going to be about that, but being really, really clear about who my readership is, what is it they're struggling with, what am I going to help them with through this book? So as a result of that being much more focused, the post-publishing experience has been so much easier. It's easier for me to promote the book and tell people what it's about. I've also found my speaking engagements have been much more. I did a lot of speaking engagements for the first book, but I have a speaker platform now. I'm constantly on podcasts. I do at least one interview a week. I'm doing paid speaking work now. I'm continuing with my coaching programs, and my social media profile is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's attached to one specific thing that I do well, as opposed to what I did before, which is I do all of these things well, which of course we all do. We're all multi-talented. And the third book, you know, The Female Edge was about women and their experience. The third book is also about my lived experience, which is helping organizations do diversity, equity and inclusion well, and bring people on that journey, particularly leaders who really struggle with that whole process. So the inclusion edge, as that one's going to be called, is again from my experience, but it's going to be very specific about who is that for as well. So your coaching, Rethink's work and Book Builder really helped me to understand that.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's fantastic to hear. Sophie, what have the results been of your books?
Oh, they've been unbelievable. I mean, I was really lucky with the first one came out in sort of September, October 2019, so pre-pandemic, thank God. And I was able to really leverage the book launches. So we did one in Newcastle and one in London, invited all our clients at the time and prospect, and they were really well attended. So they were brilliant. And then off the back of that, I just got all these opportunities coming to me like all the time. It was unbelievable. So I got offered 2 TEDx talks, and normally I think you have to apply to do those.
That's right.
I didn't have to do that. They were just like, hey, do you want to come do these? And I did one of them, and that then created other opportunities. God, what else? I feel like there was loads of things. I got offered a careers column in a column in a careers magazine, which was fantastic, off the back of the book, which I did for about a year. I got offered loads of speaking gigs. It was so easy as well to sort of package the books into a paid speaking gig, and people just didn't blink at the price. And some of the prices I've charged people, I'm like, oh my God, like, they pay me this to go and speak. But it was just amazing. When I applied for the most recent non-exec role, which is a paid role for a hasn't been announced yet, but it's an investment fund that's going to float on the stock exchange in March.
Wow.
For Women's Day. And that's a really well paid role. And when I applied for that, the guy that I applied to sent over my details to his business partner, and the feedback that I got was, oh, we definitely want to interview you. John was really impressed when he Googled you and he saw the books and the awards and stuff like that. So it was just that whole authority, credibility piece. And it gives you something a bit different. I mean, we're in a community where we do know lots of authors, but that is unusual. That really is unusual.
Definitely.
I was so impressed. And yeah, it's just created really fun stuff. And then it just makes it easier to approach people about things as well. You can link back to the book. I've done quite a few radio and TV appearances now, which all adds to that, and you can chat about the book. And I take copies of the book to these sorts of things and give them out, and people love it and they get back in touch with you. It's a nice business card to have, isn't it? Right?
Absolutely. No, that's brilliant, Sophie. Wonderful. And Sapna, we started with you, so let's hear from you at the end of this conversation. You mentioned briefly your award for your book, but tell us about the other things that have happened as a result of your book being published.
Yeah. So Let's Get Visible came out in January 2020, so that was just before the pandemic, and we had the book launch in the February, and I remember quite a few people sort of saying that they couldn't come because they had a bit of a cough, but it was still well attended. And Lucy, you gave a very lovely speech. It then went on to win the award in March 2020. So as everything was locking down, and I accepted my award on video, that was the first video award ceremony that I'd ever attended. As everything else was locking down, actually my business had an amazing boost because of the book and the visibility. And I ended up working with clients. Kind of what I was doing. I do these one-day brand workshops where I used to do them in my home, but suddenly it was opened up to working with clients in Dubai, and I've worked with clients in Canada, and I've worked with clients in Australia and Switzerland. In fact, I'm meeting. I'm in Dubai at the moment. Did I mention? And I'm going out tonight for drinks with one of the clients that I worked with in lockdown, who found me because of the book. So so that was amazing. I ended up headlining an International Women's Day speech, keynote speech. That was it was literally the last thing I did before lockdown, before everything locked down. Yeah, and it's again, it's that credibility piece when you're talking to clients, and it helps you, as Sophie said, it helps you stand out. And I'm all about creating brands that help my entrepreneurs stand out. The book itself stands out because it's a square format, and people kind of go, oh, I love the format of the book. So they're impressed by the look of it, and then they kind of go, well, as a business card, it's brilliant because they say it's beautifully designed, and it's like, well, it's kind of showing what we can do as well for their business. So all of that has, you know, kind of really given me confidence. It gives clients confidence in working with me. I have since, you know, kind of been a brand mentor for a business accelerator course. I was asked to be a business mentor for the University of West London. I've been doing some guest lecturing for the Hult International Business School. And, you know, I think it just all had that everything was all came out of the book effect. So yeah, that was, you know, and again, you talked about pulling different areas of our lives together to, you know, for this holistic approach. And certainly because I'd worked not just in design, but I've been a qualified marketer, and I've worked in marketing, and I've worked in business, in advertising, sales. A bit of that all came together, and my vision process actually pulls those three disciplines, marketing, kind of business and design together, which is why I think it resonates quite well for entrepreneurs, because they get it and it's speaking to them in their language.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. That's so good to hear. For someone especially who thought they might not publish the book at all, or not publish under their own name, that's just such an endorsement for getting out there and daring to do it. So Satna Piru, Sophie Milliken, Mary Maguire, Jean Gibson, Paula Dunn, thank you so much for being with me on International Women's Day. Thank you for sharing your stories around writing and promoting your books and using your books to gain credibility, because I think what you've done is not just gain credibility for you yourselves personally, which is wonderful and what it's all about, but also I do think that every woman who writes a book and gets their book out there adds to the sum of credibility for women all over the world and breaks biases everywhere. So thank you all very much indeed for being here today.
Thank you, Lucy.